streets of East Carroll Parish in northeast Louisiana, in the heart of the Mississippi River Delta. Negroes voted here this weekend for the first time in modern history. Since 1922, no Negro had voted in all of East Carroll Parish. That is, not until Saturday's Louisiana Democratic primary. Then in groups of 2s and 3s, a total of 25 broke the barrier. The Justice Department, working with the Civil Rights Commission, guided the Negroes' case through the courts. The Negroes claimed that first the poll tax exemption with intimidation, and later voter registration tests were used to keep them from the polls. The Negroes claimed the registration tests were rigged against them. A federal judge last week administered a special registration test and qualified 25 Negroes for Saturday's voting. For many of them, the voting climaxed years of frustration and fear. Do you think that the young Negroes of this parish will have an easier time voting from now on?
I know they will.
How do you know that?
Well, this is just like a lake falls over. When you break the ice, the next fella, all he got to do is fall in.
How long have you lived in this parish?
Since 1930.
And what do you do for a living?
Teach.
Have you ever voted before?
I have never voted.
Why didn't you vote before?
Couldn't qualify.
Well, now, how did that come about? Who told you you weren't qualified?
The registrar of voters of East Carroll Parish.
Well, how do you feel about finally being able to cast a ballot?
Well, it's almost inexpressible, but I feel very fine about it, being able to do so now.
Mrs. Cole, how do you feel about being able to vote?
Well, I think it's a pretty good feeling to my idea to get a chance to vote once in life.
Have you lived in this area most of your life?
Yes, I have. I've lived here around in this area since 1918.
Do you ever recall a Negro voting in a Democratic primary here before?
Well, I heard that it was voted here in 1922, but not for me knowing it. I didn't know it.
Have you tried to vote before?
Yes, I have. I tried to vote. Tried to register to vote in 1950 or 51, somewhere along in there.
Who would you say is mostly responsible for your finally being able to vote?
Well, I would say the federal government is the most responsible because he was the one that registered us so we could vote.
Mr. Carson, how old are you?
I'm 74 years old.
Have you ever voted before?
Never have in Louisiana.
How do you feel about this being able to vote here?
I deem it a pleasure and a grand opportunity as a citizen of this parish and state since 1887.
Did your father ever vote in this parish?
In the heydays back there, I understand that Negroes of this parish did vote back in the 1800s or the early 19s.
But you don't personally recall ever seeing one vote?
I never personally known of one to vote.
Who do you think is primarily responsible for your being able to vote?
I think the Act of Congress of 1960 and the steps that the federal government have taken have given us an opportunity to vote.
Well, do you expect that the young Negroes coming of voting age now in this parish will have an easier time to vote?
I feel that they won't be any trouble as long as they are law-abiding citizens as we have been in the past and have a good character, good principles. I think we can cope with the situation.
Have you lived in this parish all your life?
I've lived here all my life.
Did your father live here?
He did.
How about your grandparents?
They lived here too.
Do you know whether your father or his father voted in this parish?
No, they did not.
Have you ever been able to vote here?
Not until recently. Last card.
Well, how did this come about, your being able to cast a vote after all these years?
Well, it all happened after the register of voters resigned. We were having regular meetings. We decided to put in our application to the district judge. That's the beginning of it.
Well, who would you say is primarily responsible for your finally being able to vote?
I would say that Justice Department is primary department.
Do you expect that your sons and daughters will have an easier time voting here than you have had?
I know they will. I'm sure.
How does it feel to be able to vote?
Well, I've never voted yet, but I feel good over the idea.
Have you tried to vote here before?
Yes, sir. I just forget what year, but Mrs. I can't. What is the lady name? Miss Beard. She was ready to vote at that time.
What happened when you went down and tried to register under this registrar?
She gave me a chair, sit down, gave me a pencil and one of the cards. She told me I made one mistake, but she never told me what it was.
And because of that one mistake, you were not able to vote?
No, sir.
Were you born and raised in this parish?
Born in this parish, but I was partly raised in this parish, some part of Mississippi, but now I left here about 5 years old, came back when I was about 7.
Well, have you ever voted in any election here?
No, sir.
Well, why didn't you vote before? Let's say when you were much younger, when you were 40 or 45.
Well, when I came out of the Army in 1918, long about in 22, I used to get a card from Washington just to vote. I went to the high sheriff. His name was Mr. John Barris. At that time, I asked him what was it for. I knew what it for. He says to vote, but you will not vote here. So I got up for 2-3 years, but I never did, even during the election, but I never did get to use one.
How does it feel to be able to vote?
I feel fine.
Have you been trying a long time?
Yes, sir.
How many years have you personally been trying to cast a vote here?
I started in '59.
And what happened the first time you went down?
First time I went down, I didn't find anyone.
Well, how did you finally get the right to cast a vote here?
Well, I just kept trying. Eventually, I got some information from Mr. Doe.
Who is he now?
Mr. John Dorham.
With the Justice Department.
Yes, sir.
When did you start trying to vote here?
1959.
And what happened the first time you went down to cast a ballot?
The first time I went down to try, I didn't find anyone.
Well, how did you finally get the right to vote?
Well, I kept trying. 1960 I tried. And the registrar, he said he knew me. But the question that he gave me, I filled out my application, okay, but the question he gave me, I wasn't up enough on the Constitution. I couldn't interpret those questions. And so I went away, and he told me to come back, and I didn't go back until later. And in fact, I couldn't interpret them. So after all, I worked on down till this court decision was handed down. And
well, how do you feel about finally being able to vote?
Well, I feel fine.
Do you think that your sons and their sons will have an easier time voting now?
I think so. I do.
How far did you go in school?
I got to 8th grade.
Did you think these questions they asked you back there in 58 and 59 and 60 were fair?
No, sir. I did not.
I came to this parish in 1910.
Let's start one more.
I was saying that I would like to admit to you all how long I've been a citizen of the parish and my record here as a citizen, not being arrested or with the same wife and so forth like that, you know, and raised a family of 7 children, which 6 of those children in Washington, D.C., One of my daughters is with the government department, with the Secret Service Department. She works at the Arlington Hall in Virginia. And I have been here as a citizen. I've worked, and I stayed in the same place until 1938, from 1915, I'll say. After I came off public jobs, I stayed in the same place on Brown Brothers Plantation, up at Miss Martha Brown's, now you might say, Panola Plantation. And until I purchased a place from the government on the Lakeview Project up here in 1938. And I've never been arrested. I've never been accused of anything of that sort. And I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to cast a vote now. I've been a citizen that long in one particular ward, one parish, and in one precinct all that same time. I've been in the same ward, same precinct, and everything all that particular time. And as I say now, I'm 70-year-old. I came here, of course, in 1910. You know, we take that from that, which is around about...
What did the registrar tell you when you passed the test in years gone by and still weren't able to vote?
Nothing was wrong with the answers to... Well, the fact of it is we didn't have a test before. We simply filled out the registration card, answering questions, and then you were supposed to fill out the card completely and correctly. And upon that basis, you were supposed to have been qualified to vote. And I passed the test or completed the card correctly each time. And I asked if I had made any mistakes, and the registrar of that time was Mrs. Beard. And she said all I had to do was to get qualified electors to identify me. I couldn't do that, and not any of the other Negroes who passed.
You weren't able to get a qualified elector to identify you?
That's right. And all the qualified electors, of course, were white. There were no qualified Negro electors, and the white electors seemingly were reluctant or just had planned not to say anything in our behalf.
I want to say that my native home, I didn't give that. I'm from Arkansas, really. I was born and reared in Arkansas and school there. I went to Arkansas, went to school in Arkansas, at Lake Village, Arkansas, Chico County.
How far did you get in school?
I finished the English course there. Then I went to Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I've taken 2 years there. Well, course, and after being a poor boy, I got over to a job and was to go back in September, as people does, but that money looked too good to me, and I didn't ever go any farther.
But you did get 2 years of college?
Yes, sir. And then I'm a World War I veteran. I went to France, served there, went for his Mets and out there, and then back and stayed in the service about 11 months, then back home. And my record in the Army was clear, and also my citizenship here was clear.
Well, why didn't they let you vote for all these years?
Well, I know. Now, we tried back in 59, Milligan and myself. Mrs. Beard was registered vote at that time. We went in and asked her about voting, and she said, well, she just picked a pencil on the table and said, they got my hands tied. Said, we don't know, I don't know what to do, as Milligan and myself. And so from that on, well, I didn't go anymore. I haven't been since Mr. Manning been in, but I was at the meetings and they said, what, you know, hide. And I saw in the papers where he said none of us was qualified to vote, and of course we...
Had you ever taken one of these registrar tests before?
Never have. She didn't give us a test. When we went there, she just didn't give us a test. She just told us that her hands were tied. Now, what she meant by that, I couldn't say. That was Mrs. Beard.
Back in the old days, let's say the 1920s and 30s, were you afraid to try to vote?
No, I just didn't, I wasn't a young man, and I didn't know of anybody else, any other colored person here voting, and heard nobody say nothing about voting. I paid poll tax and things like that until Mr. Long got to be governor, and then he abolished the poll tax, being a farmer, why. And then, as the first of me knowing it, why, they said all veterans was, exempted from poll tax, but I don't know whether it just meant that or all the people were exempted from poll tax.
Well, how does it feel to you to now be able to go down and vote?
What I appreciate so much here that not for me as I'm up in my 70s, but if I can just for the next generation, for the children coming on, my grandchildren, all like that, and any child, anybody in the state of Louisiana, in this parish, I might say, that can be able to go and cast a vote that's eligible, don't make no difference what color he is, well, I think it ought to be. And I think that our going, if we can just open the right of way, these 26 that is qualified, I think that's a record for the colored people in this parish. And I appreciate so much of being one of the number. I think it's a great mark for us. And I'm going to encourage the younger ones in my church and my Sunday school and whatever else. And at the playground, we have a little recreation ground up there at my home up on the lake. I wish you'd be able so you all could come up there and see it. Of course, now I'll say this, that the commission did assist us somewhat, that is the Recreation Commission, and I guess they will assist us a little bit more.
In getting ready for the test.
Getting set up there. Yeah, they did do that. They did do that. I'll have to say that. And I want to say this, that as much as I appreciate officials of the parish and so forth, I know that some things have been taken from us, but I appreciate getting along that I have been with them since I've been in the parish.
Do you think that most of the Negroes in this parish are smart enough to cast an intelligent vote?
Well, I do feel that maybe, well, I'll say 65 or 70% of them are.
You're aware that there are a lot of people who say these friends of yours and that you are not smart enough to vote. There are some people who say that.
Oh, yes, some say, oh, yes, sure, some say that. Say we have, I don't know, they didn't say we didn't have enough education, but they said we're not qualified. Now, what qualification it takes above that, I don't know. I know that you take a man of me and lots of others never have given the parish any trouble at all. Maybe it's because we haven't put out enough fines to build up the treasure in the parish or something like that, you know. Going to jail and getting drunk and doing all these things, that helps the parish a whole lot. But I think that we ought to live as a citizen as well as anybody else. And when we are living in that respect, I think that people ought to recognize to a certain extent as a citizen. That's what I think about it.
It'll be easier from now on out for other Negroes to vote?
I think so. Time brings along changes, and this is one of the changes that we have expected for a long time.
You're aware that there are many in the parish who say that the Negroes here simply aren't smart enough, aren't intelligent enough to vote.
I think they are as intelligent as most of the white people who are voting.
Do you think that most of the Negroes in this parish could pass the test that you passed?
I think so. It was a very simple test. And any high school student could pass the test as well as many elderly people.
Well, what was the problem before when the tests were given? Some took the tests and didn't pass them.
It was a lack of understanding, and just, I imagine some of the people were afraid of something, not having had that experience before.
How do you feel about finally being able to vote?
I feel fine. When I first came to this parish, I asked quite a few people were the Negroes voting in this parish, and they said no. And I feel better about the parish now than ever before.
Where did you come from?
I came from Colfax, Grant Parish, to this parish.
Did you ever vote down there?
No, sir, I didn't live there but quite a year, and I never wasn't able to vote there. But when I lived in Natchitoches Parish, I voted there.
Well, why didn't you vote here when you first moved here? Did you try?
No, I didn't try. The Negroes weren't allowed to vote when I moved here, and when I went before the registrar three, 4 different times. The first thing he'd ask us to get a qualify 2 electors from our parish or our precinct to identify us. He claimed never to know us.
Did you ever take a test before?
Not in this parish. He never would allow us to. Just said he never did know us.
Did you have any trouble passing the test once the federal judge administered it?
Yes, I had to have a second time try.
Well, do you think most of the Negroes in this parish could pass that test?
Well, I wouldn't say the most of them. I think quite a few of them could. Large majority of them.
Do you think it'll be easier now for Negroes to vote here?
I think it will.
Have you had any trouble over this? Has anyone said anything nasty to you or threatened you in any way?
No, sir, not necessarily threatened me. They just give short answers and talked always against it.
I mean, but no pictures in here with the voting procedure. Outside, yeah, but not in the polls.
We can be inside, though.
Well, you can stand in here and watch, but no pictures, please. Mr. Howard there? Miss Lloyd? Miss Manning.
Isn't there one precinct chairman?
Well, no, not in this deal now. I mean, we only...
Well, my point is everybody's agreed that's the rule.
Yes. I mean, you can speak with them if you wish.
No, I decided just want to get the cost down.
I mean, you're welcome, and it's nothing against that, but I mean, we don't see any point in, well, it's not anything you don't think we need. You're welcome outside or anything is fine. And we can hit this all right, so it's not out there.
Might be better off. Wait.
Adam Milligan, Jr. Bragg Clay, B-R-A-G-G, C-L-A-Y.
Clay's the last name.
Clay's the last name. Florida, did you have a card? Yes, you got it already? Okay, well, that's all right. I just didn't see the card. I'll give you.
Of East Carroll Parish in northeast Louisiana in the heart of the Mississippi River Delta. Negroes voted here this weekend for the first time in modern history. Since 1922, no Negro had voted in all of East Carroll Parish. That is, not until Saturday's Louisiana Democratic primary. Then in groups of 2s and 3s, a total of 25 broke the barrier. The Justice Department, working with the Civil Rights Commission, guided the Negroes' case through the courts. The Negroes claimed that first the poll tax exemption with intimidation, and later voter registration tests were used to keep them from the polls. The Negroes claimed the registration tests were rigged against them. A federal...